Can you turn my mic on? Okay. Okay. So our next speaker is Primo Orpilla. He's a principal and co-founder of Studio O+A, an interiors firm responsible for groundbreaking workplace designs at Facebook, Microsoft, AOL, Yelp, and many other companies. Welcome, Primo.
Thank you, Cindy. I'd first like to read this one excerpt from this blog. It's Writers and Poets, and I think it contextualizes what we're going to talk about, or at least what I'm going to talk about today, where we work today versus how we worked just 5 or 3 years ago. So, the importance of place and where writers write and why. Ben Franklin wrote in the bathtub. Jane Austen in the living room surrounded by her family. Ernest Hemingway always liked to write under a tree. And Marcel Proust in his bed. I think what I'm going to show you today is a lot about the difference. The way we work today is so different, and with technology, obviously, we can leverage the entire facility. So many of our facilities, when we talk about workplace, we talk about the entire floor plate, extending out into the landscape. So what I'm going to show you are 10 topologies, and there are variants of these topologies that we've developed over time. And we've given them names because we feel where the ratio used to be 1 in 20, now the ratio is 1 to 5. So that means for every 5 people, there needs to be a place to go and meet. So, is this it, Luke, right here? Okay. So, real quickly, this is just a quick visual of a couple of different places. We now have larger workplaces, conference rooms and meeting tables that are almost like lunch rooms. We take advantage of circulation. So we want communicating stairs to actually act as another place to work. And then we have furniture that mimics conferencing. There's a lot of news about workplace. Obviously, everybody knows about Steve Jobs and the way he designed Pixar to have the central atrium, so you could different parts of the company interacting, collaborating, and this was by design. He tried to do it with the restrooms, put them all in one place, but that became too big of a task. But this is a good example of the atrium at Pixar. At Facebook, this was the first Facebook when they went from 10 buildings to 1 that we had the opportunity to work with them on, and it was all about transparency and the simplicity and the honesty of materials, and in a way not overbuilding and using the existing building elements. And, you know, everybody's talking about Marissa Mayer's comment that they no longer have telecommuting at Yahoo, and they want to bring everybody back to the workplace. I think this is a significant statement in that this company is no longer allowing the telecommuting because they want people to have those face-to-face meetings. They want that collaboration. There's a difference when you have that conversation face-to-face with the inflections in the meeting. And we realize that, and I want to contextualize where we do our work. It's in the Valley. So we're working with people who are mostly engineers. They love to team. They love to collaborate. So these are the products of working with these type of people. So these are the 10 different topologies. And I want you to think of a couple of things when you see these things. I want you to think about your personal workday ritual. How do you get started in the day? You know, when you go, is it right to Starbucks, stay for a little while, or just jump in the car, get to the office, and go right to your desk? Probably not. You probably do a couple of other things prior to getting to the workplace. And that's something that we like to look at when we're designing a space and explain to our clients that you need variety. It's not just being tethered to your desk all day. It's having that respite in the lounge or the kitchen area. Or we have many different topologies we're going to see today that are almost like phone booths, or these tertiary spaces, which are like shelters, spaces within the space that are not necessarily private. So the first one we're going to look at is town hall. Or I'm going to point at it. Town hall. Town hall, much like Lee said in his earlier presentation, multifunction, I think, is the heart of design these days. This room here acts as a big eating area. It also acts as the all-hands meeting space. For some companies, that can afford a full server, what we do is we set up these islands and you can put warmers up and have people queue up, get their food, and go right out to this space here. Or you can have, and this is also another example at AOL's town hall, where we have a lot of media built right into the wall, so you can do an all-hands meeting. So up on that left-hand side, you see this header and the video conferencing camera. You can actually drop down, pull these pieces away, and you can have the all-hands presentation there. And this is one of our latest ones. This is actually an all-hands area that is also a bar. This group really likes whiskey, so they wanted a whiskey bar in the basement of their space. So this happens a little later in the day. This is not something you start on in the morning, but if your workplace ritual says I need a jigger of rye, well, you can do that. Library, because we do so much open plan in the Valley, the problem is noise, and everybody talks about noise and interruptions and what happens in that space. We've come up with the library because we want to, by protocol, have a space that is open to the floor plate, but you do quiet work there. So this is a real nice little project. The clients were actually from London. They all went to Oxford. They wanted to recreate their Oxford library. So we did it simply by getting some wingback chairs that we bought at a thrift store, and then we got some great wallpaper that actually was designed by an artist in London, and did that, and that's rapid rack shelves on the back. So we sort of created the whole library aesthetic. And some libraries look less like libraries. This looks like a poker room, sorry, but this is Zazzle's library in Redwood City, and it actually does have books in there. This time when we photographed it, it did not, but there's a bookshelf in there. This is actually at Microsoft at Building 4 in Redmond, and this was our attempt at a library, and it was stocked with Kindles, and you know, there was no real text in there, but you went there and you did quiet work. The whole idea of workshop is a lot of companies are now allowing 80-20, so 80% work and then 20% personal work. So we wanted to provide areas for that to take place. So much of the time is spent on the computer. We need a place to go where you can do something with your hands, whether that's fixing a bike or going to the shop and doing a special project with a 3D printer. We've had clients provide these areas, and they've been very successful. At Microsoft, as big as the campus is, you'd be surprised there are bikes, but they're not readily available. So we want to make it a part of the environment. So when you walked in, they were hanging right in the lobby, and there was a place to pull out a couple of tools and work on it. Adjacent to that is the garage, which if you're in that room, you'll probably be working on personal work, and you don't have to worry about that, because that is a place where you can go present. That's a place where you can go hang out and work. And it's called the garage. We got the roll-up door. It's a little bit of a play on that, but it is a place where you go and do things outside of work. Studios really is that space that a lot of people like to come to our office. They like the studio aesthetic, but it is about that impromptu meeting at a high table. That's something that is not sit down and formal, but it's very quick. So if you need a quick meeting, we call these high meeting spaces studios. This is a good example of one that we just finished for Zazzle. This was for Samsung. This was a place where they wanted to bring in outside consultants to work and be innovative, and before it was just a sea of cubes. So we kind of pulled the ceiling back, did some high benching, and created this very warehouse aesthetic. This is Square. Peppered between the low workstations, we put high workstations between each one so you can quickly turn around and work with your colleagues on solving a problem. And there are conference rooms and there are other spaces, but these are things that we'll put into a design. Individual work areas, obviously on the West Coast we do have a lot more open plan. So we like to customize those. People still need a place to put their tchotchkes and hang out, but it's limited to maybe a 30 by 60 desk, or sometimes a 30 by 40 divider, sometimes no divider. So this is something that really takes on the aesthetic of the warehouse building. Custom cold rolled steel, butcher block tables, and wired glass, and the technology dog. This is, again, at Microsoft, a little bit of a different take. Typically, at Microsoft, there would be hardwall offices on the perimeter. We pulled them back and created very nice workstations taking advantage of the view, bringing the light deeper into the space. And what you see adjacent to that, that will be a private office. Think tanks are smallish conference rooms for us. You don't want somebody making a private phone call in a 15-person conference room. It's just not an efficient use of space. And with real estate costs, what you need to do is provide much smaller meeting spaces. So we call these think tanks. They tend to be around 5 by 5, sometimes smaller. These are individual coding pods that we provided in the Microsoft solution, but they weren't, the people were not allowed to stay there all for like a year. They could only book it for 2 or 3 weeks. And once they were finished, they went back into the open plan. These are little phone booths that someone can make a phone call, you can have a conference in there, but again, it's very small, and it doesn't, you can add lots of these spaces. They're very, very popular. These are coding pods at a company called Zazzle. Again, very intensive open plan, but adjacent to it will have these private spaces that you can get into and close the door, and they're bookable. This is a company called Reputation.com, and kind of a nice story here is that we do try to recycle and bring things in the project instead of throwing it into the landfill. So it was a law firm before, heavily office perimeter. We basically took all the offices down to the perimeter and recycled the doors into the project. So these are actually walnut doors that are now painted different colors. Shelters are that in-between space that's not quite a lounge piece of furniture sitting out in the open plan, but it actually has some covering, but it's not totally private. They're non-bookable. Some people like to just hang out and work there all day. So we do these a lot, and we do them out of many different materials. In this particular one, we just use Unistrut. At Reputation, they were very much a lab aesthetic, almost a high school lab aesthetic, and they wanted